The mid-season patch 14.10 is now here, with a ridiculous amount of changes that almost feel like a completely new season rather than just a new ranked split. We've got massive adjustments to items and runes and not so much in the way of champion changes, aside from a pretty exciting Corki rework, aiming to put him back in the bot lane. So let's have a look at the rune changes first and start off with the precision tree. Press the attack is getting a rework. Now its damage amp lasts for as long as you are in combat with enemy champions, and the burst damage has been lowered. Fleet footwork has less healing but a longer movement speed buff. Lethal tempo has been removed and there's just no replacement for this one, so melee champions like Yasuo and Yone, or those typical lethal tempo AD carries, might feel a little bit sad here. Overheal has been removed and been replaced with Absorb Life. This rune heals you when you kill any unit, including minions. It does feel a little bit weak from what we've tested on the PBE so far though, but let's see how it plays out now it's live. Legend Tenacity has also been replaced by Legend Haste, and as you probably guessed, it gives ability haste for each stack, maxing out at 15 ability haste at 10 stacks. Cutdown has also been changed to now deal 8% more damage to enemies above 60% health. So into the domination tree next, and Predator has been removed, which no one will really be surprised about, as it's not really ever been picked ever since it got nerfed a while back. Hail of Blades has been nerfed for range users from 110% down to 80%. Sudden Impact's cooldown has gone up from 4 seconds to 10 seconds and no longer grants Hybrid Pen, and instead deals true damage after the next attack or ability within 4 seconds following those dashes or stealth. Ingenious Hunter has been removed as well, and Relentless Hunter has also been nerfed. In the Inspiration tree, First Strike has been tweaked with its damage and base gold going up, but the gold from the bonus damage going down. Futures Market and Minion Dematerializer have both been removed, Triple Tonic moves down a row, Time Warp Tonic also does too and gets some changes as Corrupting Potion has been removed from the game. And now there's 2 new runes here called Cashback and Jack of all Trades. Cashback simply just grants you some gold back when you purchase legendary items, and Jack of all Trades gives you stacks for each different stat gained from items, and each stack grants you 1 ability haste. When you hit 5 stacks, you gain 10 bonus adaptive force, and at 10 stacks, you gain a maximum of 25. In the Resolve tree, there's only some minor changes to Font of Life, which now heals you and your lowest health nearby ally, and in the Sorcery tree, there's no new changes. Okay, so now we're going to get onto the crazy stuff, with tons of item changes, reverts, removals, and additions. And of course, we have to start off with the biggest role impacted by these changes, the AD carries. An absolute ton of AD carry crit items have all been boosted up to 25% crit now. Infinity Edge now costs 100 more gold, but its crit chance obviously goes up to 25% and its AD is going up from 65 to 80. This is a pretty huge buff and could basically be meta defining if it's as powerful as we think it will be. The Collector has also been buffed with crit and AD losing 1 lethality to compensate and costing 100 more gold. This item pairing of Collector and Infinity Edge on champions like Samira, Draven and Jhin will definitely be very popular. Kraken Slayer has lost its crit and instead just grants AD attack speed and movement speed, so we're not sure how much this will be picked now, and melee users like Tryndamere, Viego and the Samurai Brothers will also probably look for alternatives. BT has been reverted back to its old version of converting excess healing into an overshield, so could be an interesting option to rush on some champions like they used to in the old days. Rapid Fire Cannon and Phantom Dancer have had their AD removed, but their attack speed significantly increased and of course their crit as well. PD did get its attack speed steroid removed, but seeing as its attack speed stats got doubled from 30% to 60%, it's a pretty big buff. Runaan's Hurricane no longer applies any on hit effects but has a higher AD scaling and of course that juicy 25% crit. An item combo of IE into PD or Runaan's could be a seriously strong combo this patch, especially on carries like Jinx and Twitch. Static Shiv has had its crit removed though, but its attack speed increased by 10% and now the lightning effect only procs when you kill an enemy unit rather than just attacking it. Lord Dominus Regards now has more armor pen crit and AD, but has lost that Giant Slayer passive. If you main Smolder or Ezreal, you're probably not going to like what's coming next because Essence Reaver is no longer a Spellblade item and instead now it's just crit, ability haste and AD, and of course returns mana back on hit. To add to the pain of Smolder and Ezreal mains, Navori Quick Blades has also been reworked into Navori Flickerblade. This no longer has AD or ability haste and is instead an attack speed item with movement speed too, but still does have the same passive of reducing your basic ability cooldowns. Somehow Immortal Shieldbow does stay in the game with this patch though, but no longer has lifesteal and just has some more crits and AD. Yontal Wild Arrows is a shiny new AD and crit item that makes your crits deal additional physical damage over 2 seconds. This one could go either way. I mean, we all probably have PTSD of the bleed passive Draven, so let's see how this one looks when it goes live. Mercurial Scimitar now has lifesteal but no crit, Blade of the Ruin King has had its on-hit damage nerfed, its monster cap increased, its AD and AS and lifesteal up, and now the passive slow trigger is on the third attack rather than the first. Stormrazor no longer exists, Terminus has less AD and more attack speed, and then Noon Quiver no longer has any attack speed. There's also a new Berserker's Greaves boots upgrade in the late game, but we'll get to that shortly when we cover all of the new shiny boots changes. There's also some tweaks to component items like Dagger being nerfed, Zeal being buffed, Kercher Shard being completely removed, and a new Scout Slingshot item, which gives attack speed and deals magic damage to enemy champions. Recurve Bow is now physical damage rather than magical. Hearthbound Axe gets a new recipe and some improved stats, Verdant Barrier costs 100 gold less, and there's a new epic item called Fated Ashes for some AP. And this item grants damage over time burn damage to enemies, but also increases this damage against monsters. It's quite hard to tell how well this item will do though, as it's very niche, and unless it's just a bit too OP, it might not really get built that often. For other mage items, Leandri's gets a new recipe to also include Fated Ashes in its build path, and Luden's Companion now gets all of its charges immediately, plus some extra base damage. For fighter items, Black Cleaver has been buffed with its shred increased and its max shred at 5 stacks increased too. This could be a great change for champions that really rely on this item, especially those that can stack it really quickly like Urgot. Then there's the new bruiser item called Overlord's Bloodmail, and this is a health and AD item with some interesting passives, granting bonus HP as AD and increasing AD based on your missing health, which could be a really unique option on those last stand fighters like Olaf and Set. For tanks, Anathema's Chains has been removed. Warmogs has had a huge health buff from 750 up to 1000. Winter's Approach and its upgrade Fimbulwinter now have more health but less health from mana scaling, and Unending Despair's passive cooldown has been lowered from 7 down to 5 seconds as a nice little buff too. Randuin's Omen has more armor now, a higher active slow, a longer cooldown on its active though, and loses some health, and its rock solid passive from Warden's Mail. Abyssal Mask is now cheaper, its range is higher, but its magic shred is now a flat amount, so it's losing its base or scaling amount. It also has 10 less magic resistance in general. Finally, Sunfire Aegis and Hollow Radiance, the two stable tanky top laner early items, now have less health, but have been given some ability haste. Now let's get on to support items, and for tank support, Knight's Vow's armor is down, it now grants health per 5 seconds, its damage redirection is higher but no longer doubles if your linked ally is on low health. Zeke's ability haste has been nerfed along with its armor and it no longer has mana, but now it has magic resist and more health, which just means it's probably going to be a better all-rounded tank item now. For enchanters, Shurelius has been a tad too strong recently, and has even been spreading up to the mid lane with champions like TF, so now its movement speed and AP have been nerfed. Dawncore has now been changed, losing its summoner spell haste and ability haste, and instead gains more AP. Echoes of Helia, just like Dawncore, has been completely forgotten about this season, and this means it's had some tweaks to its shards with more damage and more healing. So that covers all of the item changes for all the different roles affected, but now we've also got to talk about the big boots changes. And first things first, mobility boots no longer exist, and have now been replaced with an upgradable pair of boots called Symbiotic Souls. These boots give you an empowered recall, and after you travel a certain amount of distance around the map, it will then upgrade into Synchronized Souls, which increases its movement speed from 35 to 45, keeps the empowered recall, but now grants you an extra 45 movement speed out of combat. So basically you can't just rush Mobies and instantly start zooming around, and instead the extra movement speed comes in once you've already covered some distance. Plated Steel Caps now costs 100 gold less, has 5 more armor, but its block percentage goes down from 12 to 8, making it no way near as OP against auto attackers, and instead just gives it a bit more armor, so it definitely feels like a nerf overall. Then we have the most exciting part, which is the new AD carry boots, as Berserker's Greaves can now be upgraded with 2000 gold from level 15 onwards. This item gives attack speed and movement speed as expected, but it also now gives you a stacking move speed buff on hit with 5% MS each stack up to 3 stacks. There you have it, that's all of the runes and items covered, but there's also some changes to summoner spells too. Barrier has been buffed with a bigger shield. Cleanse is now a 30 seconds longer cooldown, but does provide some more tenacity after use. Exhaust slow is up 10%, but the cooldown is longer. Heal's range has gone up slightly, but the biggest change is Ghost, as its duration is down from 15 to 10 seconds and it now has a longer cooldown too. AD carries will probably be fine with this, especially with the new Zephyr, but champions in other roles that rely on Ghost like Darius or Singed will probably not be too happy with this one. Finally, we've also got to quickly cover the champion changes this patch, and there's not really too many. There is one big champion change though, which we mentioned earlier, and that's of course Corki's mid-scope update. Now we aren't going to break down every single detail and all the different numbers here, but to sum it up really quickly, the aim is to get him back into the bot lane like the very old days. They've removed his passive package and brought back his old true damage passive instead. His Q has been buffed so it's now faster and costs less mana. His W now has a 300 minimum range but the same max range and has a slightly higher mana cost late game. His E's got a longer cooldown, now deals 100% physical damage rather than split 50-50. His ultimate is also now physical rather than magical. It costs a bit more mana and has less ammo plus a longer recharge time too. However, his basic attacks now refund 5 seconds of his ammo recharge time. The AP scaling has been removed of course, and the AD scaling is now a flat 70% at all ranks. And apart from all of that stuff, he's also got some tweaks to his base stats too. Now it's pretty much impossible to know just how strong or weak Corki will be this patch, so we aren't going to place him in any tiers this week. And instead make sure you check back next week for our updated tier list video once we've got all those juicy stats to dive into. Cassante has got some buffs to his base stats too in an attempt to revive him a bit more to the general player base in solo queue without making him super broken in pro play. Set gets some jungle buffs, so we might see him make a little appearance here this week, and then there's also some minor buffs to Viego with his Q's healing from minions, Cho'Gath's E, and Tryndamere's passive crit chance. Skarner gets yet another round of adjustments after his insanely successful rework, and Yasuo and Yone get some changes to their passive crit multipliers and AD conversion, which is pretty much because of all those crit item changes. Finally, there's also the release of the new and reworked mastery system, so let's see how this one turns out, with an interesting approach to make mastery great again, although it does look pretty weird. So that's all the crazy changes summed up, and yes, it took a bit of a while to get through, but that's how big this patch actually is. So now let's jump into those roles and see how these changes affect our tier list this week. Now we're going to start off in the top lane as always. In the S tier we have Camille, Darius, Fiora, Gragas, Jax, Kayle, Kennen, Malphite, Set, Shen, Urgot and Vayne. Urgot has been strong for a while, but will probably get even stronger with the buffs to Black Cleaver. Set is definitely one to watch out for, as we're interested to see how the new Overlord's Bloodmail works on him. Champions that rely on Ghost like Darius will likely take a bit of a hit this patch, but with Darius being so dominant recently, we are going to keep him in the S tier for now. Now as we expect AD carries to be pretty strong this patch, Malphite and Shen move up to the S tier. The reason is because already they've both been pretty good recently, but Malphite provides a fantastic ultimate to deal with those immobile AD carries, and Shen can ult and peel and carry the bot side. So these two could be amazing splits to go for this split. We're also interested to see how Tryndamere does with all the changes to tons of his core items, as well as the massive crit buffs, and of course the individual buffs to his passive. Lane Viego could also make an appearance with the buffs to his sustain this patch, but we aren't going to add him into any tiers just yet unless he actually gathers some popularity. Moving into the jungle next step, and in the S tier we have Brand, Ivern, Kindred, Rek'Sai, Shaco, Skarner and Taliyah. Ivern has had a crazy win rate already recently, and he's just the perfect addition to any team comp, especially with a fed AD carry. Skarner gets another round of changes, but again we're going to keep him in the S tier for the time being, because most of his changes so far already haven't really made any differences. Rek'Sai will continue to be one of the strongest junglers in the game with no nerfs to her core items or her kit. And she's actually a fantastic user of the new buffed Black Cleaver. Shaco has been terrorizing games in the last few weeks, whether that's AD, AP or even back to the old crit Shaco, so watch out for the clown. There's also plenty of great choices in the A tier too though, like Kha'Zix, Nidalee, Xin Zhao and Lee Sin. Now let's move into the mid lane, and in the S tier we have a ton of choice, with Ahri, Akali, Anivia, Brand, Galio, Katarina, Sylas, Taliyah, Tristana, Twisted Fate and Vex. There's no real crazy shift to the meta here, as most of these choices have already been popping off before this patch. We do expect Tristana to be a bit of a force here though. She's already been strong and especially at higher ranks, but now with all those juicy crit changes and buffs, she's only going to get better. Skirmishing machines in Sylas and Katarina will still do the things they do best, and big AP mage picks like Brand, Ahri and Taliyah will continue to be great options. High elo picks like Hui, Qiyana and Aurelia will all stay in the A tier, and if you're good enough to play them, you'll definitely already know how strong they can be. At lower ranks though, Vex has been a serious force recently, and with the changes to Luden's companion, her and some other users of this item will probably see some more success this patch as well. Okay, now we move into the role that has had a ton of changes this patch, the bot lane. And in the S tier for AD carries, we have Ashe, Draven, Jhin, Jinx, Kog'Maw, Samira and Twitch. We predict the two strongest champions in the bot lane this patch to be the snowballing machines Draven and Samira. The Collector and Infinity Edge buffs will make them absolutely destroy lanes if they get ahead, and put games to bed super early and easily. Speaking of Collector and Infinity Edge, Jhin will also be a seriously strong pick too, so don't forget about him either. A core build of Infinity Edge into Phantom Dancer or Runearns could also be an amazing item build for the likes of Jinx and Twitch. But with the changes to Blade of the Ruin King, Twitch might go either way. Kog'Maw doesn't really benefit much at all from the AD carry item changes this patch, but just due to how strong he's already been recently, we are going to keep him in the S tier for now and see how he fares in the next few days. When it comes to Ashe, we've got a feeling there'll be tons of experimenting to do with her new builds. But when the right one is found, we think she's still going to be a fantastic, solid S tier pick to play, especially so at low ranks. As we touched on earlier, Ezreal and Smolder will probably take a bit of a hit this patch, as Essence Reaver loses that Spellblade passive, and crit-based AD carries just have so much more to look forward to this split. Well, that's from what we can tell so far anyway. Aphelios is another one to watch out for. I mean, his win rate hasn't been the most impressive recently, but in the right games and the right drafts, and with the right player behind him, he's still a really scary AD carry to play against. Finally, let's have a look at support then, and we feel this role could be defined around the AD carry meta this patch. So in the S tier we have Janna, Leona, Lulu, Melio, Nami, Rakan, Rell and Thresh. We've basically got a bit of a split here with the most reliable engaging supports in Leona and Rell, and the best enchanters in Lulu and Melio. If the AD carry shapes up how we expect it to be, then we have those engaging champions to play around Samira and Draven, and then those enchanters for the hyper carries in Jinx, Twitch and Kog'Maw. Blitzcrank will probably lose some of his roaming power now though with the removal of mobility boots, so champions that excel in 2v2s and can play around their AD carries instead will likely be more consistent choices. Zyra should stay a solid A tier pick too in the right lanes with those poke AD carries like Jhin and Caitlyn. Nami is still one of the most versatile supports in the game and works with pretty much every bot laner you put her with, whether that's a hyper carry, burst AD carry or even mages like Brand. Nautilus will also probably stay as popular as ever this patch, especially with so many AD carry players picking those Dravens and Samiras. And that's going to bring us to the end of our mid-season patch 14.10 predictive tier list. We'll keep updating this tier list as always as this patch unfolds over on our website, and of course we'll be bringing you an updated tier list video soon to check out what the meta shapes up like with all of these crazy changes. Don't forget, if you do want to stay up to date with all the best builds with all these new items, then check out our website at mobalytics.gg or download our desktop app, where you can not only see the best builds and runes but import them straight into your game in Champion Select to stay ahead of the meta. Thanks for watching guys, best of luck on your solo queue climb this split, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.